And I will go ahead and say hello and welcome. My name is Court McCracken, and I work here with Get Connected by Galaxy Digital. And today our presenter is going to be Elisabeth Donovan. I get the privilege of working with Elisabeth because I get to coordinate a lot of these external education experiences for our extended community. And Elisabeth is our state network liaison and also the VP of sales here at Galaxy Digital. She has so much experience. It's so exciting to be able to sort of host this conversation with her because she brings more than a decade of experience working with nonprofits, and she's going to be sharing information and insights from thousands of organizations that we work with here at Get Connected by Galaxy Digital each and every day. And she leads our whole team in understanding the challenges that nonprofits are facing right now and working with volunteers and gathering actionable data and balancing the needs of engaging volunteers while growing impact. So I'm excited to hear what she has to say about just practical and simple strategies that real world nonprofits, volunteer programs are implementing every day to create really sustainable and measurable results. So with that, I'll just remind you that any questions or comments that you have, you are free to drop those in the chat box, and I'm going to try my best to keep up with them. We'll also kind of have some time at the end of the presentation to sort of field some of those. So yes, with that, Elisabeth, I will go ahead and just hand it over to you. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you. But I will also give Court a plug. If any of you have been tuning into our Volunteer Management Insider and our Learning Center, Court does a lot of writing for us. So I'm going to do my best to encourage her to stop me and interrupt and pose those questions and share some of her own insight, because I think she paints a beautiful picture with her words. So it's a great, hopefully we'll do well together. Let's see how we do. All right, everybody, I'm going to get my screen share going. So hopefully this will work well for us and get this presenting. If you're able to see a ton of blue, you're in the right place. All right, here we go. So this again is going to be focused on virtual volunteerism and then real world data. I think hopefully you'll be able to, and my goal for Lunch and Learn and something like this is really to take away two things. I want you to be able to take away something that's just going to be very tangible that you can put into play right away. And then hopefully something that just gets you thinking and chewing on a concept that you can think about for the future, so that you can start to do something that's urgent, something that can happen immediately, and then something that you can plan for as you start to incorporate some of this into your program. All right, so what are we covering? We are going to be going over, as we've stated, virtual volunteerism. How do you go about virtual volunteerism? What does it even mean? How do you focus on it? How do you approach it? And secondarily, we're going to come back to not just virtual volunteerism, but your program in general, that long-term kind of what can we chew on for the future, that discovering hidden volunteers, networks. How do you look at your data? How do you look at your programs and start to build intentionally? So here we go. Exploring virtual volunteerism. I put this here, and it wasn't part of this presentation that I have given it a few other times. This was a new piece for me that I saw a couple weeks ago and I wanted to incorporate. It was the why do people volunteer? And I have us pause there for a second, because I think whether we're talking virtual, remote, in person, we often are so focused, and I say the we because I'm always focused on process, end result, the goal. How am I going to pull all this together? And I think our goals are always such a big piece of our equation. We need to get this many meals served. We need to get this many people helped. We need to do this many things. And whatever that is, we forget often to step back and think about, why is this volunteer here? What is it that brought them? Why are they becoming engaged? What can I do to engage them? So thinking about that, the three things that this, it was an article I was looking at, was talking about was people volunteer primarily around these three, and I think they ring very true to me. They want to give back to their community. Could be someone who just has a servant's heart. Could be somebody who was helped themselves in life, and so they want to turn around and give back. That's a very easy one for all single cause nonprofits, volunteer centers, whatever your mission. Giving back can be woven into anything you do. The second point, to support a cause. I think that one's a little bit trickier, frankly, because I think uncovering whether or not your cause is going to be something that engages them. I think that's where you think about corporate volunteers, voluntold students. Sometimes they're there and they are not engaged in your cause. It's hard to create that. It's a harder piece. So I think cause is secondary often. It's going to be the thing that naturally is there or naturally isn't there. But cause is an important part of this. And then to feel socially connected. And I think that one resonates so strongly with our virtual volunteerism and remote pieces, because I think that's the piece I heard so many of our clients that get connected and so many just volunteer directors that I interface with being challenged by this last year is how do we keep people that are not able to come together feeling socially connected, feeling like they have a connection with our mission and that they're doing good. So we're going to try to weave some of this in, and I want to, challenge us all to keep thinking back to the volunteer as we think through our processes and our goals. All right, why should we use virtual volunteerism? I think retention and recruitment have been the big buzzwords often for nonprofits throughout decades, not just in the last couple of years. Virtual volunteerism is a piece of that. And I think we're going to start to challenge what does virtual volunteerism mean as we go forward today. Retention, again, thinking about connection. How do we make and keep our current volunteers feeling connected, keeping them engaged when they can't come on site as often? I think the piece that virtual volunteerism allows for there in that retention is how you can kind of keep bringing them back, sharing a story, making them feel like they're still in your newsletter, they're still in what you're doing. That retention is very critical. I think the piece in my mind, and this is again just my opinion, I think virtual volunteerism has opened a door to recruitment that is even more powerful than just that stopgap measure of needing to keep people engaged during times when they couldn't come in. I know for myself, I'm sitting, and I think Corey, you're actually in your home office today. We're at our home offices today. I was in the office earlier this week. As a country, as a nation, as the North America in general and the world in general, I think we're all moving toward this hybrid model that never really existed to the degree it does now. So what does that mean for recruitment? What does that mean for what we see going forward? We're going to look a little bit more at that. So part of what I'm going to challenge us on as we think about recruitment, and I'm pulling up a bunch of these here, is not to think about virtual volunteerism as computer work. I think that was one thing that's been coming out of these sessions is often people feel that the computer, turning back on Zoom in the evenings or joining for one more meeting. You all made the choice to join today during your lunch hour. I appreciate that. Hopefully you're getting something good out of this. But that moment of like one more hour spent online feels very daunting for some. How do I make that fun? I don't think you have to pigeonhole virtual volunteerism into that. I think you want to think about virtual tasks and you want to think about in-person, solo, virtual, and remote projects. So part of what we have seen, and I think this is something that was true for the last decade, is clients that are moving toward doing things online often find an efficiency to that they just can't do in person. You may not have had very much online prior to 2020. So some of you are thinking, this is all new to me. Some of you have been using software or something that's on your website or Facebook for years now. And this is just kind of morphing with what we're now dealing with this year and next. I think what we've seen across the board is the Get Connected clients, and I think over and over again we hear that, I've seen everything from 25% to 33% to, someone was like 150% better recruitment. I don't necessarily think it's the software that made it better recruitment. I think it's the intention to have something virtually online so that when they are intrigued by something, when they're engaged by something, their very next step is not to sign up for a specific task or time, because often when you get to that, you're like, I can't do Thursday. That's not going to work for me. And now I can't get engaged and I move on, and we're all moving on at all times. If you don't catch them in the moment, you haven't caught them. I think what volunteer management software and things like what Get Connected provides is that when they become intrigued, I saw a tutoring opportunity, maybe I could do that. You're virtually driving them into your database. So I find out who this person is. And then if the one time slot doesn't work out, you've got them in your database. So your catcher's mitt becomes much more encompassing because you're catching them. And then you're able to start thinking about how am I going to retain? How am I going to recruit? How am I going to engage? So thinking about ways that you can drive some of your processes, what our mission statement is, making that a recording video that can be part of your onboarding, your training, moving that to a virtual Zoom. So people are signing up for a shift with a Zoom to come in and learn about your organization. That actually is probably more convenient for a good portion of your volunteers because they're able to just join virtually online, learn about what they need to do, process their background check, possibly straightly through a software company, and then they're able to then choose, now how will I engage with your organization? And that's where, challenge virtual. This list is not all virtual. These are not all computer-based tasks. These are things that a virtual onboarding can then be paired with a remote, a solo, a computer virtual task. So maybe it is tutoring that is one-on-one, and maybe it is in person, but you're going to eliminate a lot of those contact pieces so that it's just the tutoring that's one-on-one. Maybe the tutoring is virtual and you're going to do it through a Zoom, but you're thinking about how can I start to make a process that can streamline things, that can push people forward a step or two and do it as quickly as possible so that I can engage them with the thing they actually came to me for, which was the cause, which was giving back to the community, which was feeling connected with someone. I think that's the piece that you want to kind of prioritize in virtual volunteerism. What can I take virtual? What did I take virtual that didn't work virtually? I think talking with one of my very good friends and neighbors, or actually a volunteer director, and she's constantly giving me feedback on, we tried this, virtual didn't work for this. We tried this, we got more people engaged than we've ever had engaged before. Donations were less though. So which ones are we going to keep? Which ones are we going to change? I think that's a good challenge for you. Just think about what's working. Is it a DIY project that's just worked really well because it was just so tangible? People could do it remotely in their homes. They could drop it off. You're able to feed back to them, the recipient getting it. That's worked really well to just let people feel connected to your cause. Maybe that wasn't something you can do at all with the cause you work on. You needed to have things that went virtual, like your board meetings. I pointed this one out in another meeting for myself. I'm a working mom. So my time frames are very limited for what I can do and when I can do it because I have all these little people that I have to coordinate. So that said, when it comes to an hour of my time, and our company believes in giving back, we learn so much by walking a mile in your shoes. So we're always trying to encourage our employees to go out. We have paid time for volunteerism so we can learn what it's like on the front lines and we can then speak even more intelligently to it. I couldn't make it work. That 1 hour in the morning or that 1 hour lunch break, I was constantly looking at it and like, by the time I get somewhere, actually try to do something and get back, I need more than an hour. I can't even make this work. So in 2020, it was really eye-opening for me to see some of the things that went virtual open doors for recruitment to populations you've never touched before, because those board members who always said no because they couldn't make your meetings or they didn't want to be on one more board, now it's a 1 hour commitment that they can turn on their computer for during lunch, 1 hour at the end of the day, and they can make it work. Some of those people that couldn't lead teams because of different things that they had going on in their lives now can, because they can bring together a group of their friends, have an advocacy meeting, have a recruitment meeting, and talk about what it is they love to do. Tutoring one-on-one for an hour, I can now take part in, where homework diners before and after school did not work for my schedule because I have my children before and after school. So I think there's a piece of just thinking about what you've always done and thinking about how do I take virtual volunteerism and make it easier to get engaged with my program, but also how do I take virtual volunteerism and open up new opportunities and make certain tasks, certain programs, certain projects more accessible to different people that maybe just were hindered by how you did it previously. when we look at kind of the creating of virtual needs, and this is very tactical, so just we'll kind of get into the homework pieces here. Part of these, if you have them already, use these as just guidance. Look at them. Do you currently have virtual needs, remote needs, solo project needs explained this way? Or is this something where you're going to do it for the first time? These are really good guidelines. Our CX team, customer experience team, works with a spectrum of single cause nonprofits, volunteer centers. So a lot of this is coming out of the work they've done with our Get Connected clients so that they can really kind of point out best practices in volunteer management. First thing that someone sees is the title. So one thing you want to make sure you're incorporating are the right words. This is actually part of our software, and I'll show a few sites in a minute, but think about whether it's a Facebook posting, a newsletter call to action, an email, the title has to tell everyone whether or not they can do it remotely, virtually, if they're going to be able to be flexible with it. So start there, start with the end in mind. Be informative, fill out the description. A part that you lose when you're doing your training, your onboarding, your project descriptions online is you don't have that in-person chance to really like go over the details again. So you want to think about, why did I choose to do this virtually? Was it because I wanted to make it more accessible to people time-wise? Was it because we're trying to engage some populations maybe that are COVID related, a cancer patient, someone who can't be in a group setting? What would that look like? Why did I choose virtual? And explain why you chose virtual. Maybe you literally chose virtual, nothing to do with 2020 and its effects. You chose virtual because you think that 7 o'clock at night for a 30-minute session is going to be a better way for everybody to get onboarded into your volunteer program because it's after they got home after dinner. So thinking about like, why did I do virtual? Tell people why. The why is important. Think about sharing as much instructions as you can through either your reminders, your posting, the COVID-19 policy, if that's a link. People want information. Some people want very little information. Some people want all the questions answered before they come. So put yourself in the seat of the volunteer. Any question that they might have, they aren't necessarily going to have a chance to interact with you. So you have to make sure your description is very fleshed out. What's your policy? Show them what they're going to be doing. I think there's a part of volunteerism that it's an ad. You want them to see something that they are like, I care about that. That's a cause I want to help with. That's a task that I would be good at. So having a video, having an image, something that really brings to life the opportunity is a big piece of recruiting for that opportunity. You also, again, you're thinking about a task that you're not necessarily going to get the chance to do a reminder about in person because they're taking it with them home, they're doing it off site, they're going to be doing it by themselves on site, but by themselves. So you want to start with the end in mind. How do you expect them to record their progress? If you're thinking about the goal you have for the project, if you don't think they'll complete it entirely, how are you going to record how far they got? If it's hours, because your impact grants are really based off of hours and volunteer participation, how are you going to make sure that they're using volunteer management software like ours or something to create a record so you have that result that you can use for your measurable data? And then I think even here, you start with a thank you because you may not get a chance or connect with them afterwards to say thank you. So that moment of making sure they know how appreciated just the fact that they're signing up is, that spirit of appreciation is so critical because you're trying to connect. You're trying to show them that what they're doing matters, even if it's just a thing to keep them engaged. Court, I'm going to just pause for a second. Are there any questions coming up so far or anything there that you're seeing that we want to chime in here before we keep running? Don't hesitate to use that chat, everyone. If you haven't been, we definitely want to hit some tactical questions along the way. So if you have something that's burning, go ahead and throw it in that chat. We'll keep going.
Don't see any questions thus far, and just want to make sure if anyone's having struggles viewing the presentation, just send me a message in the chat and I'll try and help, okay?
Thanks, everybody. All right, we'll keep rolling. Be specific, let them know the parameters. So this is, again, you're planning a party. It's the who, what, when, where, why. What time is it going to happen? What are the requirements? What do you want me to accomplish while I'm there? Who do I reach out to for questions? If I'm doing this on my own, if I'm solo on site or at home, is there a number? Is there an email? What do I do in the moment if I get stumped so that I can continue forward? And I think, again, just really, how should you do this? We don't want you to come on site. I think donations was a big piece. Don't drop off the donations here. We're going to collect them there. Like, there's been some changes in how you've traditionally done things. So think about making sure that that is very explicit and very clear to the person participating, because you want to meet their expectations. You don't want anyone to walk away with a bad experience. So having that very informative upfront parameters, requirements, making sure everybody is coming together with expectations preset so they arrive knowing what they're supposed to accomplish, that takes a lot of cleanup off your plate. All right, so creating a virtual volunteer opportunity. Again, think virtual, think remote. Think about how can you virtually do a lot of the pre-qualification steps in terms of just getting paperwork done, training done, onboarding done. Think about how you could maybe move all of that virtual, even if the task itself doesn't move virtual. The data, how are you going to make it virtual? How will you collect the data at the end? How are you going to generate excitement? The people that take part in it, how are you going to get them to come back again? What's your follow-up step? How do you invite them to invite more people? How do you get feedback? All of that, kind of what's going to go around this, is important as well. I'm going to jump out of the presentation for just a second and show you a couple ways that some of our clients have been doing this. So bear with me. This is a single cause nonprofit, and I just pulled them up because I thought this was really interesting, in that their first calls to action are virtually helping a first-time volunteer figure out what they're going to do. They've got spotlights going right into critical needs. They want to make sure that those are the ones addressed first. So just thinking about how you draw someone's eye to what you want them to do first, how will you inform them? That all matters. This is a volunteer center, but same sort of thing. They've got things that are very timely front and center, but they've also got virtual and remote volunteering opportunities. They advertise that in this rotating image bar. So whether you're thinking of Facebook posting, or whether you're thinking of something on your website or in your volunteer management software, portable projects, I can click into this and go straight into those projects that I might take with me or work on at home. These links to ideas, they've just gathered all sorts of things from this one community, talking about what they can do remotely. So it's teaching opportunities, it's tutoring in person or virtual. These hybrid ways, I can't do it, so I'll do it virtually. Court might be able to do it in person, so she's going to do it in person. That moment of letting it be very accessible to different people is critical. I think one thing we've talked about too is just how you might have someone who is going to, as a volunteer, change as their life changes. I think, Court, you had shared with me the other day, she works for equine nonprofit, and that task that she does right now is very physical. She lifts water and she fills troughs. Should she have anything that changed her physical capabilities, what would happen? She couldn't do that task. So does she see a task that she could do? How do you show someone something that, if I get pregnant, if I am going through cancer treatment, could I continue with this task because I would be able to transition to a different way of accomplishing the task? Or do I need to figure out, could that person do something else for our organization? We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. One last one here, I thought this was an interesting one because it was both getting them straight over to where they can see remote or virtual, but there's also that leadership piece. They're looking for people to engage networks. They want to find leaders who want to work remotely together. So not only thinking about your staff, but how do you get other people to join your team to be able to help you coordinate and facilitate this engaging environment online as well as in person. All right, I am going to jump back into the presentation. We'll see how this goes.
Elizabeth, I do have one question. I maybe can just read it to you now, and you can either put a pin in it and address it later or answer it now. But Leslie says, does your platform do email push of publishing the campaign, or do you link with third-party email platforms like MailChimp? I did mention we have our email tool. And then she says, I would like to see how you publish your recruitment campaigns multi-channel. Where and how do potential volunteers see these new virtual opportunities? So
I'll say, not to put too big of a pin in it, but I would say that part of what I hope each and every one of you is thinking about, I think those questions are a great example of someone who in a one-on-one consultation can really talk through with one of our consultants what their organization needs. Because I would say, Leslie's organization may need 3/4 of something, and another one needs half, and another one can't use volunteer management, and another one isn't going to be able to grow into it for another 2 years. So I think we probably have a very large spectrum here. I would say that the part I hook on with what Leslie just said is, how do you start to wrap all of what you're doing together? Yes, you need to have a platform that can push out emails, and ours does that. But you want to think about how you loop and pull everything together so that their onboarding, their reminders, their communication is something that is easily managed. I think there's this piece, and some of you may be there, which is why you're joining today, where you start hitting this tipping point where you've cobbled together so many things and so many systems that it's actually taking more time to cobble it together than it would be to start to move into one management system. So I think that's a piece that, that if any of you are kind of at that place, and I would, projecting onto Leslie, it sounds like she may be in that place where she's really thinking through how she can coordinate this better for the future. Do a one-on-one consultation, and Court and I will share more about that in the end, because that is the client base we have. They're people who are using a system because they've outgrown what they could do without one. The part of exploring real world data, and where we're kind of going to pivot at this point, is to think about what you focus on for the future. And I think this is a piece where we say data. I don't love data, I'll be honest. I like strategy. I like seeing what I see. But as far as like numbers, I'm more of a story person. I had someone kind of pull me into data as a way that appealed to me, and it was talking about chocolate. It was talking about M&Ms. I love chocolate. Let's go start there. I do love chocolate, but the part that has stuck with me, and this was something said to me early on, was, Elisabeth, we're not trying to grab a handful of M&Ms. We are reaching in, and we really only want the yellow M&Ms. And when we reach in, if we get lucky and a green and a blue stick, fantastic. But we're going to keep throwing back and not worrying about the reds and the browns. We're just going to focus on our yellow M&Ms. And if we can find those, that's what we need this year. So a big piece of what we're going to talk about is how, as you get ready to pivot into 22, what are those yellow M&Ms for your organization? For those of you that don't like chocolate, sorry, but for those of you who are more number of people, data is exciting to you. We'll go 3 critical data points, 3. And the reason I really bolded out that 3, if you try to find 13 or 30, you'll find nothing. You really have to have a focus. And I think part of what virtual volunteerism did, especially moving a lot of our practices for data capturing into online forms, it's given us a better way to collect questions and answers and really start to see the stories within the data. So data points, and I'm going to throw out some ideas here just for kind of where you might start thinking about data. If I have to only know 3 things about a volunteer coming through, or if I'm only looking for 3 things in 22, what are those 3 things that are going to move the needle most for my organization? Is it a skill set? We desperately need a volunteer to do our accounting. That is going to drop a lot of money to our bottom line that we won't have to pay for that work anymore. We need an accountant. Maybe it is a skill set. If we had 50 tutors instead of 10, what would our grants look like? What would our impact look like? We need more tutors. Maybe it is a network. You've found out that there is a large manufacturer and their CEO has a common cause goal that you have, and you want to get that corporate engagement started with that company. Who works for that company? How do I get into that company? How do I facilitate my CEO having a chance to speak with more and more of their employees? Whatever those things are, and those are just ideas, these 3 things may change. They may never change. That tutors, we need to recruit more tutors, may be the guiding star of your organization for the next decade. we need a new roof and we're trying to find somebody who owns a roofing company may only be a 3-month task, and it's going to come off that list and another one's going to make the top 3. But think about what those 3 will be. I'm going to encourage you to not just think about it in terms of roles. And I showed this graph because I think it just is such a powerful piece to a volunteer program when you start to go into those networks and those skill-based organizations. Because if you're able to, and I grabbed this offline a few years back, but if you're able to think about our special event staff, and if you're able to move that fully into a volunteer role, if you're able to move an inventory task that has been an overtime piece for your staff off into a volunteer role, accounting, if that becomes a different position, those pieces are just fixed expenses that your volunteer program can start to fill the holes in. And when you're talking to the board members, when you're talking to leadership, having that ability to say, we just saved $10,000, we just saved $10,000 over here, all of those are falling right to the bottom line that can go back into the services and the good that you're doing. So thinking about the value of your program, that one of those 3, if it's a person, if it's a role, may be extremely valuable and worth elevating it to your top 3. I'm going to encourage you before we go into this picture to think about who you can ask to help you identify those top 3. I think especially with the hybrid and virtual work right now, we've lost some of the office synergy. I don't know how many of you guys are still remote working right now, but that ability to walk across the hall, the ability to overhear a conversation, eavesdropping, I love it. But that moment to know what's happening around you, that's critical. So, if I asked Court from her writing, what are 3 things that if I could find for you and make a difference this next year, she'd give me 3 answers. And I can guarantee you those 3 things that she is most interested in learning are not the same 3 things that if I go to our, office manager, our CEO, one of our board members, to say, what if I could find out these 3 things, what would your 3 be? They'll be different. I would encourage you, it is a powerful question. So don't make it a throwaway and bring it to a team meeting. Bring it to I want to ask you this question. I want you to think about it. Come back to me with your answer in a week or 2. And then go back and get the answer. Because you're going to have to take all of that feedback, shuffle it through, filter it out, and pick, okay, I'm going to take 1 that's long-term, 2 that are immediate, these are my 3. And then you're going to need to think about, how do I get those answers? Is it going to be my intake form? Is it going to be a survey I send out after the volunteer experience? Is it going to be the conversation where I start to ask a very strategic question so that I can always get this answer before I let any volunteer go? So the picture on the page, this is clearly not virtual, but this is a Impact Day many, many years ago that our company took part in. And what I wanted to use this as an example of is that when you look at this picture, you will not and could not, if you were, and I believe the gentleman kneeling is actually the person that represented the nonprofit that day, there is no way he could find out all the information I'm about to throw onto this page about these participants. Couldn't have done it. But hidden within each of these people are all of the things I'm going to start kind of clicking through. So, here we go. So, I love this touch screen, newfangled technology. All right, the part that I love here is just the diversity on this page as far as who is represented. There is a student intern. If you were looking for a translator, there are 2 ladies on this page that speak more than 4 languages fluently. There's an accountant on this page. There's someone who has QuickBooks experience. There's an MBA. You think about an event staff, there's a bartender on this page. There is a musician on this page. There's somebody whose company is roofing and gutters, and that's their family business. There is a family business that has multiple businesses throughout our area. So each of these things, skill sets, who they are in life, networks, soccer league, all of that is represented here. And what you're looking for matters, because what question can you strategically be asking to find out from this group as they're getting ready to volunteer whether or not they're part of that company you were trying to network into, whether they're that skill set you were looking for. You've got to be intentional. So you can't do it all. You got to think about your 3. There's a piece here that is the cause behind the people. And we talked about at the very beginning, cause is a tricky one because you can't force a cause. People naturally have causes. But I think it's also a very important part of volunteer recruitment to say you can't judge what causes are going to resonate by just looking at these people. So I bring up the example that someone in our company is dealing with a family member who has mental health. Someone in our company is a single mom. Somebody in our company has been on WIC. Somebody in our company has a family member that's homeless. Somebody in our company, each of these things, 3/4 of what I've just said actually is my life. Because of my family, because of my extended, one network, things that I've gone through in my life that I care about are very deep. Family member dealing with drug addiction, that's going to hit me, and you would not know unless you ask the right question. Having lost a job right as I was pregnant, went through Medicaid, went through WIC. There's an experience there that isn't readed off my face. You've got to ask the right question. So I used the example, I was in a America's Service Commission, ASC conference, and they had a keynote speaker that I thought was just so powerful because she asked this one question. And I think this is a challenge to each of you because you cannot use the same question. You each will have to really probably try a lot of questions and fail on some of them. But you each need to find a question that just gets people talking. And then you each need to do the thing that I always struggle with, but it's stop talking yourself and listen. Because you need to listen to their stories and you need to leave room for them to talk so you start to see who these people are. Now, that keynote speaker, the question she posed, and she just said it out loud, and I watched as a participant the chat blow up, was about free school lunches. She's like, how many of you guys were free school lunch kids? And this was a group of predominantly AmeriCorps members, but lots of different people, different levels. And that popcorn question, it just lit up that room. They all had a common cause. So many of them had been the free lunch kid that you just saw this like shared experience that was so powerful. We talked in another meeting about a question that I had posed, and I've used it a few times, so hopefully it'll help work for you guys too. It's a question of what was your first car? Very simple question. What was your first car? It's a great icebreaker to ask for the room, and everybody's talking about what their first car was. But if you're listening, you're hearing who grew up really hard. You're hearing whose parents bought them a car. You're hearing who didn't have a car till they were in their 20s. Some people never have had a car. I was in one meeting where the first car the person got was a 14-year-old driving a tractor. She was like, I drove the tractor all over town. That told me a lot about that person and their background and where they came from and their work ethic. There's pieces and questions that are just so powerful. If you find the right one that helps you identify cause, helps you learn who these people are, what their skill sets are. I think, again, you're leading to Court and her equine experience. She hauls a lot of water, but I think most of you today are realizing that's not Court's primary skill set. She's got some skill sets that that organization may never have tapped into. How do you uncover that? How do you learn what you assume the person can do and what the person can really do that they have experience in? Just a final kind of takeaways here, and then we'll do some Q&A. And I think hopefully there's some good things coming out of the chat. If you've had a question you've been holding on to, encourage you guys to go ahead and throw that in there. Things you'd like to learn more about, don't hesitate to throw that as well. We are looking to do January 27th. We'll have another one of these, a little bit of a focus in planning for 2022. How do you think about incorporating maybe the 3 things that you're going to find over the next few weeks that are going to be the most powerful things for you to find out? Reminder to make your goals known. You need to make sure that everyone knows what you're working on. If you figure out your 3, share it in every meeting. I'm going to find this out. I'm going to ask this question. We're going to figure this out. I'm going to find an entrance into that company. I'm going to find an entrance into that network. I'm going to find us this skills-based employee. share it, remind them, keep asking. You can't try once, you got to keep asking, you got to keep looking. Robust follow-ups, I think I'm going to tie that back to virtual. If you aren't telling people what you need, that they helped you meet that need, and then here's what you accomplished because they helped you meet the need, they just don't feel engaged. That connection of, even though I had to drop off a portable project, or even though I never got to be on site, that robust follow-up tells me 10 kids got Christmas gifts, 50 people got tutored, middle schoolers' grade levels went up by X% because we worked with them this year. Couldn't do it without those after-hour tutoring sessions. Those robust follow-ups are so key, particularly when we're removed from each other, because they need to see that end result that they were a part of so that they keep coming back. And don't work alone. I think if you have your 3 and you don't tell anybody else you're working on them, you don't ask those questions, you just do it alone, it will not be as powerful as if every member of your team knows Elisabeth's trying to find that out. Somebody help her find that out. You start asking that question as well, so that if you find out so-and-so works for this company, I can go after them and I can try to find out who else works for them. So I think that communication is so powerful. Any questions right off the bat, Court, that you're seeing popping up? And then feel free if there's things that you want to add. Would love to chit chat back and forth and we can kind of pinball off some other ideas.
Yes, absolutely. I guess my curiosity, has anyone who's attending tried some of these virtual volunteer options? What have you noticed? What questions do you have? What's worked? What hasn't? That's a little something I'm curious about actually here. So feel free to drop that in the chat if you have any virtual volunteer ideas or questions, things that have worked, things that have been challenges. Feel free to share them, because I feel like that is where we have some gold nuggets of conversation to start for us. And while you're thinking about that, I'll just let you know that some of you may have heard about this presentation through our Volunteer Management Insider publication that we send out twice monthly through email. Please stay tuned there, as we'll keep you updated on future presentations, and also feel free to share the Volunteer Management Insider with any of your colleagues or people working in nonprofits. We try to publish really valuable content for you there that's helpful for your day-to-day. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn. And if you have more specific questions in between now and January 27th, when we have our next presentation, you can always contact us at info@galaxydigital.com. We're always available. Okay, I've got some questions coming in.
Court, before you jump to those, I'll say that same email, I'll leave it on the screen just a little bit longer. You may have, some of you have already used it to sign up for this, but go ahead, that's the email too. Just feel free to use that email if you do want to set up one of those one-on-one consultations. That's something we do free, and it's something that we can, again, if it's the right fit, fantastic. If it's not, that's okay. We want you to be able to get really good information for your network. But anytime you're like, I'd like to learn more about the software, that's the great email to use as well.
Yes, absolutely. So Susie says, we've used virtual volunteers since the conception of Soldiers Angels, which I'm guessing is your program. We actually use virtual as well as in-person volunteers. That's wonderful. I'm curious as well if you noticed any kind of change in the percentage there of volunteers using which options, or if people stayed, pretty consistent with the same throughout just the changes that we've all been managing these last 2 years. Teresa says, this is a very legit question that we get a lot. The biggest challenge with older adults is their lack of internet access and or no computer laptop. That's something I know we've run into quite a lot in the rural areas here in Western North Carolina and the mountains, just internet access in general. And I'm curious, Elisabeth, do you have any stories from our clients about how they've managed that? I know that some organizations that I've worked with have kind of held hotspot days and like had time slots, or they would use the software and talk with people on the phone to like kind of get them in the system. What are some other ways that people have handled this sort of more remote life that have challenges with access, because that's a very real issue.
It is, yeah. Now, I think the thing that I've seen is just a best advice, best practice is to know your area. You know, as Court said, we're in the mountains, so that is an issue for some of our area. If you know that accessibility to internet access is one of your biggest challenges, then you are working with, you know, online, whatever your online presence is, needs to have a call to a phone number. It needs to have a way to have some hour where you will help them move forward in your process. And I think, you know, online, it's not the website. If it's something that they're able to see on their phone, if it's able to be something that is passed out in a flyer, if you have a media partner, then you're thinking about just creating that office hours almost, where they can make a phone call to you during that specific time, where, you know, you're able to streamline. It's just that one time a week, but you're able to have a person there to help them with accessibility, because some of our best volunteers are not tech savvy. And I think I've always kind of leaned toward that. My parents will probably, hopefully will never see this webinar. We brought in my parents once in a focus group, and they're both in their 70s. And my mom, who has been a middle school teacher, she's very iPad savvy, you know, so she was doing very well. The feedback we got on her was she's extremely slow. She reads everything and then she makes the correct choice. That's my mother. My father, however, somehow clicked a couple links and was signing up for a PayPal account. So, you know, like he was off navigating into the ether. I think the thing I always encourage is you'd be surprised, and I think we've all seen it, how the, you know, adoption of Zoom, the adoption of virtual things this last year, our culture is more tech savvy than they were 2 years ago. It is shocking to me how much that has grown. But for those who are not tech savvy, they're sometimes your best volunteers. And that accessibility for someone who is not going to do anything other than call you, commit to every Tuesday at 4 for life, and be there on time and be intentional and be powerful, accommodate them. You know your audience. If that is how that works, don't force someone to fit your model. Give your model enough different paths that they can take the path that works for them. And I think that would be my best advice, would be just to really know your people. What was hard for them? What did they struggle with? And then don't always do it for them. That's the other advice I would give, is you try once and fail. You haven't really tried yet. You know, if I take my mother through something once and then I make her do it the second time, right, the third time, she's got it. And now I'm getting Amazon links of things she thinks she should buy. You know, I think that moment of like, give them a little time. It's amazing to me how fast they will pick up it. And then those who can't pick it up, help them, because sometimes they're very valuable volunteers.
Right. And that's where that hybrid model really comes into play. It can feel a little overwhelming, like, oh, I have to offer all these options so that I can get people in. But I think when you start implementing these things with time, it becomes easier. And then it just becomes a system. Like, I know I've got to touch these points. Like, you know, Tuesdays at 2 is when I do my phone sign up for people who don't have accessibility, or I have them come in and we do a computer hour and I get them in the computer. And then maybe after that, they're independent once they've done their training and they're doing kind of more remote things, like maybe they're collecting resources and dropping things off. So, you know, it's kind of getting people to that place of independence with their work, like Elisabeth is talking about. And Susie does say that their program, Soldiers Angels, saw an increase in virtual during the pandemic. And then, so I hope we spoke to that accessibility, Teresa. I do know that that is a real issue in many communities. Leslie has a question about exploring social media volunteers, which is getting people to repost an organization's post and build community. So if anyone has attended, has done that well, Leslie's offered their information for advice about social media volunteer campaigns. I would like to speak to that. I'm pretty passionate about social media for a community, if that's okay, Elisabeth. I actually really would love to, you know, plan something for that actually in the coming year, where we talk very specifically about social media and the channels for nonprofits and specifically volunteer programs. I think that topic can go pretty in depth, but I think one of the biggest things that I can say with social media and engaging is communicate consistently. Because one of the things I've noticed in a lot of clients that I've worked with is that it's like, I posted one time and nothing happened. And then they just don't post again for months and months. And it's really, I talk about it like planting seeds. You just have to plant it and nurture it a little bit, week in and week out. So I do think that if you are going to kind of start, whether you've started or you're really trying to just supercharge your social media efforts, I do think, that's kind of one of those things where tapping volunteers, like just asking, hey, does anyone here have experience in social media? Because it might be like me, like where I feed horses, but a lot of people that I work with at the equine nonprofit don't know that I actually also have experience doing social media for a lot of organizations. And so it's funny because they know me as the horse girl. They don't know me as the social media girl. So I think number one, I'd ask your volunteer base and see if there's anyone doing that. And then I would probably plan a very specific campaign where I let everybody know this is what I'm going to do. And I want you to like, follow, and share. Because we're passionate about making greater impact in the community and we need your help. And this is one way that you can volunteer. And what's great about social media is that it is a virtual volunteer opportunity. I can do something good for an organization, even if I can't give an hour. I can share their post on my page and I know I'm spreading their message. And that's a way that I can give without even like kind of having to commit to a full. So I would say that's something that I do a lot to build community just in my personal life and page. So I hope that that's a little bit helpful as far as just a little something to take and go with, that a campaign planning is a little more involved. And I would like to do a presentation on that. And then, yes, really just planning it and letting people know what you need from them and seeing if you've got volunteers in your organization already who might be really passionate about it. Like I am. I love sharing education and passion and causes on the internet. So grateful for that. So Carolyn,
I was going to say Carolyn's actually caught my eye. I was going to say with hers, it's kind of playing off a little bit of what Court just said, and also that yellow M&M, like that moment of like a train the trainer where your volunteers are likely to, in their social networks, to have people like-minded, people that will want to help or take part because they're friends. Absolutely ask. I think we forget to ask in that moment of like, somebody has a great experience. Don't say, thanks, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Think about, thanks, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And then practice, and what are you going to ask them for? We would love to get more people involved. Do you think, this was a great time? Do you have people you'd like to invite or that I can send you something to pass on? Will you come back? Get that next question in mind, because if they've got a network, asking to introduce you to their network, your first yellow M&Ms may be those people that are self-starters and they're going to be advocates and they're going to help you grow the network. And then I think, the question, Susie, you're asking about, as you grow the network, I think it's always twofold. It's what and how you can best capture information. So whether it's the sign up form so that we've got, Court coming in to do a very specific task, that's what she signed up to do. But in her profile, she told us some things so that, when you're using a Get Connected or a volunteer management software, you can say, show me everybody who told me they have social media background. I wouldn't have known that about Court in person because she's always helping with the horses. But if I look through that and I pull up those 10 people that also, ticked that box, that filled out that survey, then, there's something powerful about conversation. I think, Susie, your question about who do you then converse with, I think once you use the basic data points to find those people you want to network with, then it is talking to Court and finding out, does she want to do this for your organization, or does she do it all day long at work and that's why she's working with the animals at night? I think those moments of like just human to human at that point is so powerful, but getting your time streamlined to the right, most likely people to respond is where that management system like Get Connected can just like help you filter and weave down that information.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the story that Carolyn shared about the pen pal program with the excellent online training. And then it is a little bit like what we were just talking about with the social media, is like if you host a really amazing training and you give your your consistent volunteers exactly what they need, you're just empowering them to go spread the message and recruit more volunteers for you, because they had such an amazing training and they feel empowered and they become, leaders because they're seasoned. They've been there for a little while, and they care about the cause. And so I know what my friends are passionate about. So if I'm passionate about something, I'm going to go ahead and share that as well. So yeah, and Leslie asked a follow-up question here about B2B and corporate campaigns, which Elisabeth, I think that you would be the best to field that question rather than single volunteers.
I plug for the software. What I really love, one of the features is it's something called user groups. So it doesn't have to be a company, but it's often a company. It could be a school, a Rotary Club, a church. It's a group of people. And I think, Leslie, if I gave you any good advice on how you work with a group, while software can help you monitor the group engagement, a group, you have to remember, is a spectrum of people. And let's just pick on Court and me. So Elisabeth's there because she was told to be there. She had to be there. Court's there because she loves horses and she wanted, her cause fits, everything fits. If you asked Elisabeth and Court the same question, we'd like you to come back and groom the horses next week, I'd be like, I did my Court. I mean, I like horses. I'm playing this out. I actually do like horses and I have groomed horses, Court. You don't know this about me. I have cleaned those hooves as a child. It's been a while. But I will say that, if you ask us both to do the same next step, she probably might, and I probably wouldn't. So you want to think about a spectrum of volunteers, a group. If you're doing a corporate group coming out together, your rules for engagement of how to learn who those people are is, again, to listen, but to also think about what's an easy first step. Maybe it's a simple, email that you're going to ask everybody to send to one more person. Maybe it's something that I'm never going to have to come back at all, but I can collect supplies or I can do a fundraiser. And then for that person that wants to run the front desk because they had such a fabulous experience, what's the question you can ask that you can know? I can jump Court all the way to best volunteer ever, but Elisabeth's going to have to go through some steps. And I need to make sure each of those steps isn't too big of a step, because I want to make sure I'm meeting her where she's at and engaging her each time. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. I think that's where things fail. We jump too fast to try to get them all the way in. Great project I took part in with a Homeward Bound project. It's kind of a homeless initiative, housing first kind of authority in our area, is we had like a day on site, impact day. We did cleaning, very low threshold. Out of that, they had a take back to the office project where we collected supplies for a new housed participant. Out of that, we had another one where we actually got to meet a new housed participant where we were coming into a housewarming. So each of these things we were doing, sponsoring. Then we were asked as a company to sponsor and to have some corporate sponsorship of the program because they had gotten us invested. And 9 out of 10 of our employees had actually participated in something with them before we were ever going to leadership at the company to be like, hey, would we want to actually do a corporate sponsorship of this group? So they really had a path. That path is very strategic and important.
Yeah, these are some really great questions.
I would like to end, if you don't mind, Court, with just saying that info at, and maybe if you don't mind typing that in there, but info@galaxydigital.com. If any of you have topics, questions like this that you would love to have incorporated into the next Lunch and Learn, would love to just get that. We're kind of plotting out the different topics throughout the year. So would love to get ideas or just burning questions or things that you struggle with or things that you think would be great to share more on. If you'd like to share, we're looking for some panelists here and there as well. So yeah, please keep sending that way. I'll let you kind of wrap us up, Court. I think you've got some final comments and reminders, but otherwise, thank you all so much. Love having the Q&A. This is great.
Yes, I'm, first of all, again, just want to reiterate what Elisabeth just shared. We're so grateful for your time and your attention and your presence and engagement today. That means a lot to us. We were so excited to be here with you, and I will be sending out the recording. So stay tuned. As soon as I get that edited, you will be receiving that from us. And stay tuned to the Volunteer Management Insider, the VMI that we send out twice monthly. Share that with your colleagues. We really work to publish content that's really going to help just in the day-to-day application of being a volunteer manager. And oh, good. I'm so glad you love the VMI. We work really hard on that. And you can always check back at galaxydigital.com as well in our learning center. Follow us on LinkedIn, and we will definitely be letting you know about January 27th upcoming Lunch and Learn. And again, if you have more specific questions about Get Connected, our software, you are welcome to also use that info@galaxydigital.com email, and any other inquiries as well to follow up with this session. Just very grateful. And we have actually ended on time. So we are doing great today. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you. Thanks, Bryce. Oh, thank you so much, Leslie. Really, really grateful to you all. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you. And oh, thank you, Susan and Teresa. We are so grateful, and we will see you. We will see you again. And oh, thank you.
I know we always, yeah,
wonderful.
this is great. And I also think it's always nice to just say thank you again. Like, you guys are in the trenches. Thank you for trying these things, seeing what works, telling us what you tried and didn't work.
Yes.
You know, I think that moment of us empowering you is what we're trying to be here for. So thank you all as well for what you do every single day.
Yes, absolutely. And look forward to hearing some more of your stories about applying virtual volunteerism and collecting that real world data that you need to help make your programs make a bigger impact in your community. So we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.